A headline this morning said that Mary Barra is on a charm offensive. You feeling charmed?
No, not at all. There's a lot of anger, disappointment, and of course surprise. I flew over to Detroit last year to speak to the president of General Motors, Dan Herman, in order to seek certain assurances, and I got them, including there'd be no surprises, the channel of communication would be open to us. And so it's come as a shock, and it's obviously demoralising many of the workers at the moment. I'm meeting Dan Herman this morning. He's flown in from America, and I'm going to meet him at 11:30, and there's lots of questions that we're going to be asking. I met with our British government yesterday, and they're going to get deeply involved in this in order to protect the jobs here in the UK. We've got no intentions of allowing a single job loss as a result of anything that might happen. And just at the moment, we don't know whether GM are talking about an alliance with Peugeot, whether it's an all-out sale, whether there's any other purchasers in the market who might be interested. And we'll be linking up with lots of people, including, of course, Matt's in Russellheim at the moment, our sister union, IG Mattel, we'll be speaking to, and our sister union in Paris, in France, the CGT, to make certain that whatever is planned is not going to result in wholesale job losses for working people across Europe. And I'm as determined as ever to protect the jobs here in the UK.
Len, can you come from a real position of strength, given that Brexit looks like it's going to slap tariffs on the cars that you make in Britain, and you export the majority of the product that you produce there?
Yeah, it's a fair question, Matt. The reality is, of course, Brexit is a factor in play, and that's why, of course, we're in discussions with our government about, from my union's point of view, hoping to keep access to a tariff-free single market. And there's lots that will have to be done in the next 2 years in those areas. But with the General Motors, we also need to make certain that nobody's looking to use Brexit as an excuse to attack our jobs. Britain, the UK is Vauxhall Opel's largest market within Europe, fifth largest in the world. It's a profitable market, and the plants in the UK are amongst the highest productivity plants in the whole of the automotive sector. So there's a strong case to maintain the plants in Britain, and of course we'll be liaising with our sister unions across Europe to make certain that the solidarity that we hope to create will make Peugeot and General Motors respond in a positive fashion.
Are you concerned, Len, that in the event of a sale, the Vauxhall brand would be shut down?
Well, that would be a disaster. The Vauxhall brand in the UK is one of the best brands. It would effectively result in a collapse of the UK market for Vauxhalls or for any new owners. And we're not going to allow that to happen anyway. It would be wrong for us to allow British plants to close, and yet, if Peugeot are the new owners, for them to still have access to the UK market. I'm afraid we'll have to engage in forms of activity that stop that happening. I hope we don't get there. I hope we can meet with, if it's Peugeot, the new owners, and reach a satisfactory conclusion and move forward together. But one thing's for certain, we're not going to sit on the sidelines and allow this to happen, and hopefully our government aren't either. I met with the Secretary of State yesterday, and he's committed to involve the British government, which of course is critical given that the French government own 14% of Peugeot, and they're already talking about meeting with the Germans. Angela Merkel, I understand, may well be getting personally involved, and this will be to no doubt protect the French plants and the German plants, and we want to make certain that our voice is listened to as well.
Len, what deal did Nissan get?
That's a great question, Guy. I was with the Secretary of State yesterday and I asked him that question. He tells me that it'll all be revealed soon. Even our members in Nissan, we have 100% organisation up in the Sunderland plant, and at the moment, nobody's quite sure. The Secretary of State said to me, look, it's not dramatic. It's more to do with skills and providing...
Carlos Ghosn was pretty convinced by it, though.
I know.
And you wonder whether... is a similar deal on offer to other car plants in the UK?
I'm certain it will be. Otherwise, the automotive sector, which is critical in the UK, and of course it's critical. This is a big moment for the British government.
Absolutely.
They've talked about an industrial strategy, and frankly, this is a big test for them, because automotives and the componentry side of the automotive sector is critical to a resurgence of the manufacturing sector in Britain. And I would imagine that whatever deal was offered to Nissan will be offered to the other automotive companies. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of anger amongst them as well.
William Hobbs, is the UK automotive market too lucrative to sacrifice, or is this just going to be one of the things that that country has to deal with as a result of voting to leave the European Union?
Matt, personally, I don't think that Brexit should be definitive here. In our view, we go back to the view that that we long held, actually, that if the UK did decide to exit the EU, vote to exit the EU, that Brexit would prove a headwind, but probably a digestible one. If we're talking about, tariffs, the fact is that sort of global tariffs have come down such a long way in the last several decades that you're not dealing with it shouldn't be a game changer in terms of the tariffs, even in a hard Brexit scenario, which probably seems the most likely one. So, no, in our opinion, the automotive industry can survive. I mean, technological advances are likely going to continue to, over long periods of time, reduce unemployment in the reduce employment in the sector, as it has over the last several decades. That's probably a trend that can't be reversed. But that doesn't mean that productivity can't continue to increase and output can't continue to increase.
Well, the workers are in the UK are already incredibly productive. And Len, let me ask you, because we've been seeing inflation numbers come through relatively high in the UK, but it hasn't been pushed through to wages yet. And I noticed that workers here in Rüsselsheim, Germany, make more than twice what workers in the Vauxhall plants in the UK make. Can you really expect these workers to continue at such a relatively low level of pay?
Well, of course, the situation in terms of certainly the automotive sector is the whole question of costs is determined by the capacity in the plants. Our Ellesmere Port plant can take a much higher capacity than it's currently producing. But in general, that is a problem with the UK economy. That's why there's considerable concern about sustainable growth within the economy, because wages are not keeping pace with inflation, and the job growths in the UK tend to be low paid. We have a race to the bottom culture. We want to turn that into a rate for the job society. So in the automotive sector in general, it's considered to be a reasonably paid sector within the UK. But as you point out, compared with Germany, the rates of pay are much lower, and I think it kind of nails a lie to the fact that British workers are somehow pricing themselves out of a job. The only thing I can say is that it's been proved that in union-organised workplaces in the UK, they get paid much better than non-union workplaces. So we'll continue to strive to improve pay as best we can in a difficult climate, as you indicate, and Will's mentioned about Brexit. There's a lot of uncertainty with many of the companies, the CEOs I speak to, about future investment, and there's the key that we have to grapple with over the next 2 years.